text amendments, and I provided that with our committee team. And the impetus was just go back to this, and then we can flesh this out more. But ideally, what we would say is bed and breakfast, a private residence or portion thereof that offers services such as overnight lodging, meals for registered guests. Services may extend to hosting low impact gatherings that do not exceed the interior occupancy of the establishment as determined by the fire marshal. So that right there, if there's a bed and breakfast, say the carriage house is operating an event as per this definition, and it is a low impact gathering, we won't even know about it. Why would we need to have oversight about it? That's especially if a carriage house being in the residential zoning district, that event will be interior. If a tree falls in the woods, do we hear it? No, there's no way of enforcing this. We originally had this conundrum before, and that's when we started talking about an administrative permit to document that. But that got so much pushback between the aldermen, this board, and it's just one more thing for us to have to track, that we said, no, we're not going to worry about enforcing this unless it becomes a problem. And then that would be a code enforcement issue, in which case, if it's a habitual problem, we'll take the offending party back to the Board of Adjustment to repeal their bed and breakfast special use permit. So low impact gathering, are you asking for that language to be more clear? Is that?
No, I think the definition itself is okay, but as it applies to bed and breakfast, a low impact gathering is only an interior gathering.
Correct.
Okay. Now, we kind of make it a little murkier under 3.8 2C, where we refer to special events. Special events aren't designed.
The question was leading me to say low impact gatherings are only for interior. No, so basically, if you're a bed and breakfast that's zoned in a commercial district, you're still required to have a low impact gathering per the definition of bed and breakfast, but we're not limiting commercial districts to interior only operations, if that makes a sense.
Well, see, that's kind of where I'm confused. Under 3.82A, bed and breakfasts in residentially zoned districts shall limit all on-site events to interior gatherings.
Correct. So Director Meehan foresaw this question. I had put forth another amendment to this, in which case we would talk about commercially zoned bed and breakfasts.
Okay.
But essentially, this kind of just that would be unnecessarily saying the same thing. We're spelling out that residentially zoned districts are limited to on-site events and to interior gatherings. So without saying it out loud, commercially zoned B&Bs are not, if that makes sense.
Again, I'm looking ahead to interpretations of what's written here as opposed to the intent behind it. Right. So we're saying that bed and breakfasts in residentially zoned districts are interior. So they're by definition all low impact.
Well, all bed and breakfasts hosting an event should be low impact, but if they're zoned residentially, they will be interior. And back to the point of how do we enforce that? Well, it's inside the structure. We're not going to know. If they meet this standard, then there's nothing to enforce.
Okay. So the next item, 2C, all abutting neighbors must be notified of all special events. Now, we haven't defined special events. Do we mean events, or do we mean events and low impact gatherings?
We mean events.
Okay. So if we struck the word special, that I guess that would make it clearer to me.
Yeah, that's easy done. Yes, sir.
Okay. Chairman, I've taken up enough time.
No, you really brought up some good questions on this, because I'm looking at the definitions versus what's written in here. And I'm looking for the word low impact gatherings under non-residential use standards, and I'm not seeing that anywhere. So it's like, why have a definition that has no purpose?
If I may address that question, sir.
Sure.
So low impact gatherings isn't a land use of its own. It's being defined per our committee. It's being defined as the new it's a term that's in the new bed and breakfast definition. And because it's a new term and the new definition, we're defining that term in itself. It's kind of meta, but because we're using these terms, low impact gathering, to define another term, the committee thought it was wise to define low impact gatherings. And then same situation, because the term event is in low impact gatherings definition, we needed to define the word event.
Yeah, but do you understand what I'm saying? If you've got this whole verbiage for events, shouldn't those definitions or those words that are being defined also be included in the verbiage? Because all you're saying is low impact gatherings, but when I look at non-residential use standards, there is nowhere in there that says it must be limited to low impact gatherings. Do you understand what I'm saying? There's no nexus.
I'm tracking what you're saying. I'm just trying to see. There's no nexus because we haven't used that term for any other land use, non-residential or otherwise.
But you still haven't. There's nothing in here. And I'm not trying to pick this apart. I just want to make sure this is great as it goes before it goes to the Board of Aldermen. My thinking is that if you have to define certain things, then they should be contained within the language that you say, hey, you can do this, you can do that, and here's the definitions for doing this or doing that. Does it make sense what I'm saying? There's got to be some kind of a connection.
And yeah, so
But hold on, but I want to go back to what John was asking too. And excuse me, John, if you weren't done. But there was the question about the word event, and does it have any impact on any other ordinance, anything else that we have? And I didn't hear the answer to that. So that if you define it here, is there some rolling thunder that is going to destroy the meaning of something else or another part of another ordinance?
no, I understand the concern for an exacerbated situation by coming up with this term, and then it may have an adverse effect on other things. As far as I'm aware of, no. I can't, I do not anticipate it affecting any other land use or zoning relation. Now, the benefit of this term being here is that it does provide some connection to community development. When they host their events, we at least have a land use term associated with someone else outside of planning. But it doesn't adversely affect any planning and land use term.
John, are you all set with your questions for the moment?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Maria?
Mr. Chair, my concern would be also, I didn't even think about this with the event. So I'm now the Carolina Brewing Company, and I plan to have an event in which I want you all to show up to throw horseshoes in the back. I now have a definition of event. It may require municipal services, permits, or regulatory. It may not, but that definition will impact, businesses that we have. But to me, it seems like a generic enough definition, but hard to say. Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
So I think that definition, if it goes in the UDO, is fine, but we will be aware that it may trigger other comments such as, when do I require a permit? When is this event impacted?
Can I toss in? Sure. So maybe I'll think of it a different ways. We're asking a question, Unamo. If we use terminology like this, because we need definitions, but we want them to be specific, John, to your point, or maybe that was your concern, to bed and breakfast. How would we encode it in the UDO so it's not part of 8.3 measurements and definitions? It's part of 8.3 point something bed and breakfast definitions. and therefore could not be repurposed for some other non-imagined use. Is there anything in your head that we could do? How would you approach
see
that?
that being, no, I don't know how to go about that, but I would also caution not to do that because I don't want to pigeonhole us or box us into something. And then 2 years down the road, there's a new Fandango type situation where now we have to rewrite the text amendment to amend the word event. You know, I think the idea is keeping it as bland and generic as possible benefits us. And while it's only pertinent to bed and breakfast at this moment, that doesn't mean it has to stay that way. New things happen all the time, so we could totally benefit from having it defined.
Yeah, the challenge is John is catching. And by the way, I'll make the comment here that though Wendell gets to be the spokesman, he's said several times, I want to make sure I understand what he's doing is reflecting what the subcommittee discussed. Wendell just gets to be the test guy. So thanks for being patient with us on that. John, you hit it, which is there was in my mind, at least there was like 3 things we were trying to simultaneously optimize, if you will. One was, and Wendell kind of helped put, there's this big umbrella of, hey, there's this idea of property rights. That's kind of a big umbrella of two things, which is, yeah, well, I got residential property rights, and then I bought some property and I'd like to generate commerce through this property. And the tension there gets to be, but what if I'm in a residential area and I want to generate commerce? Well, we already said that's okay. We already said bed and breakfasts are okay. Now we're just talking about special ways bed and breakfasts operate. There was another, and you hit it. There was another aspect that we were trying to be sensitive to, and that is there's only so much staff to do so much stuff all at the same time. And though I would not suggest in any way that the staff is unwilling or unable to do stuff, there's more stuff than any number of staff could do that we would put in the staff. And so Wendell and I had kind of a fun conversation, and so did Larry and I, and that is we want to be smart enough not to create some rules that are going to cause the staff to fail. And so now I'll get to your question, which is if somebody's asking for permission that you have to permit, how are you going to stay cognizant that somebody is permitted and then enforce the permit when they go outside of the bounds? And what we tried to do to reduce that tension, or at least to address that attention, was that the neighbors would be notified that an event was going to take place, whatever we call the event, special purpose event, low impact event, whatever, however we decide that. And at some point, now that I'm cognizant that somebody's doing an event, my attention is now focused on that, and I'm wondering, well, what kind of event can they do, and how can they do it? And if they run out of those guidelines, at some point, I'm going to get frustrated enough, and we've had discussions about that last time, that I'm going to tell somebody about it, either the neighbor, like, hey, you're outside of the bounds, or I'm going to go back to the staff and go, did you know these guys are consistently operating outside of the bounds of the rules that you gave them? What we haven't discussed yet is, okay, what happens if everybody says, yeah, you're outside the bounds, and the person says, and I intend to continue to operate outside the bounds. How do we enforce that action? We have not gotten to that yet. So did you have some ideas?
Well, to take your point, who determines if it's a low impact gathering or an event? Now, for bed and breakfasts, it's very clear. There are no events. There are only low impact gatherings, right? But for everybody else outside of the bed and breakfast world, a low impact gathering, talk about minimal disruption to adjacent property owners. And of course, minimal is very subjective, but it's clear for bed and breakfasts that it's got to be inside the building, right? So it doesn't, it doesn't spill over into the yard next to your house or whatever. So I think I'm okay with the definitions as long as there is some judge on, or arbiter on what would be a low impact gathering versus an event for anybody else other than bed and breakfasts. Bed and breakfasts can't have events.
Yeah, so so technically speaking, and I'm looking at page 5 of 6 in our note, in our agenda. There is such a thing as an event, and there is such a thing as a low impact gathering. And so I'm suggesting that the way it's written here is a low impact gathering is a subset of an event. So there is an event, and it's defined there. And there are some kind of events that are low impact gatherings. Sounds like we maybe need to have some more discussion there. The idea was, and is, for our consideration is if John and Doug live next to each other and Doug has a bed and breakfast and I have an event and you can't smell it or see it or hear it or look out in the street and see that I'm inappropriately blocking traffic and or using more spaces than I'm authorized, then in a sense, John doesn't know I'm doing anything. I'm just, my neighbor Doug's got a bed and breakfast. And to Wendell's point that I was trying to bring out is, as long as Doug's behaving like that, these rules are being enforced. At some point, though, I'm going to have an event, let's just say, and I'm not doing it right. I send you out a notice, and you go, "Oh, Doug's going to have an event. It's going to be this Tuesday." And by the way, there hasn't been more than 2 of these in the last 30 days because I'm neighbor John. I'm tracking now, and I could hear it, smell it, taste it, or whatever, which I'm not supposed to be able to do. And now Doug is consistently running his low impact events like this. Now I'm going to get engaged. And that was our feedback, in a sense, the way to begin the enforcement loop, which is John's not going to enforce anything with Doug other than trying to be a good neighbor and guide him. He's going to go to the authority, which would be, if it's real bad, I guess I'm going to pick up the phone and probably call the local constabulary and go, "Man, this is spilling out of the house and it's not good at all." Or, if it's a little low burn, I guess I'll go back to the city and I'll make a complaint. And that was our feedback. And that, by the way, was what we tried to embed in the, "Hey, by the way, Doug, I want to make sure you're notifying your neighbors. And if I ever start getting some bad feedback on you, I'm going to come by your place and go, can you show me, Doug, where you documented your notification to neighbors?" So that was where we were trying to embed this while trying to stay cognizant that there's only so many staff and they can only do so much all at the same time. So, Chair, or do you have any thoughts on that?
Maria has some thoughts.
It seems to me that the biggest issues here, if I'm a bed and breakfast and I have 6 to 8 people and that's my maximum attendance, and they all spill out into the backyard because I have a grill, you're going to smell it. I think the biggest issue here is limiting it to the number of potential sleepover residents, as well as making sure it's between 9 and 9 so that we're not disturbing anyone and that there's no amplified sound. I think you get to the point where it simplifies that, because if they have those guests and they spill out into the yard because it's 80 degrees and beautiful in Southport, I think they should be allowed to grill. I think they should be allowed to sit outside. And so we're contorting the definitions and the text amendment. What I heard last month or 2 months ago from Fred and myself, let's not have amplified sound where we're in a residential neighborhood where we are disturbing a number of people for profit. We've also heard we want to make sure that the number of attendees at any of these bed and breakfast events is close to or within the number of people who are sleeping there, whether they're inside or outside, because a low impact event that's limited to inside, okay, you're going to force people in July or June not to go outside. That doesn't really make any sense in a beautiful Southport location. You can't see it or smell it. Well, I'm sorry, most of them have grills and brag about grilling and related to where they're going to stay. So I think we're making this too complex, and we're killing Wendell's hours because basically he's rewriting all of it. Let's be clear about what we're restricting. Is it the noise? Is it the number of people? And keep it to that level so that it's simplified for approval. To me, I think we're all over the place on this, and we want to get it to the plain black and white. What can you do and what can't you do, and leave it to that. And the other is the twice a month is fine by me if it's a wedding. If we're really talking about having a wedding, be specific. Bed and breakfasts can have a wedding for this amount. That eliminates some of the other. And I'm sorry I talked too long.
Mr. Chair,
Sure.
I believe I asked this question either the last meeting or the previous one, and please understand that my primary interest is in the protection of the surrounding residents. That said, the fire marshal has a standard for the establishment. Do we know, will that number of people inside the facility exceed the number of guests that can actually stay there?
Yes, so yes. So if fire marshal, the way this is written, if the fire marshal set the maximum occupancy for the interior of Carriage House Inn at 50 people, that's, 40 more than that's gonna stay the night.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
My question was going to be, what material impact would there be on the neighborhood? And if what you're saying is true, if it was 50, there would probably be 20 or so vehicles, which would really congest the neighborhood. So that answers my question. Because I was wondering, would limiting it to 2 per month with a certain amount of notice, is that really necessary? If it's going to be negligible impact on the surrounding neighborhood, I guess the vehicles would be that impact.
Well, I think the answer is yes. If I understood your question, I'm just resonating, I think, with what you're saying, Ed, and Maria, this gets to where you were going and have, I mean, I think you've talked about a legitimate concern. From the perspective I come at from, maybe similar to yours, Ed, is in a residential zone, protect the characteristics that you think of as a residential zone. Hey, and I guess if you can do some commerce there too, let's give it a try. It is not, let's figure out every possible place we can do commerce to include the residential zones. That's not the approach I'm taking of. And that's why it's kind of I think what we have here, Maria, was the fewest possible words that we could figure out to protect the greatest extent to residents and still allow some commerce to happen. So that to some extent, it's like, hey, can I do a bed and breakfast? The answer, yes, you can. Well, can I have big events? Ooh, that in a residential area? Ooh, I don't know. Maybe we're concerned about that. So we were trying to figure out how to say yes to the greatest possible extent, while also being, I guess, more concerned that it's in a residential area.
So let me see if I can't bring this around.
May I touch on that?
Go ahead.
Sorry, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, go ahead.
So the way this is outlined is that let me go back to the management plan, item 2. The application for a B&B home shall include a management plan that will be that will be approved as part of the special use permits. Approved events outlined in the management plan must meet the following standards. So basically, when Doug's B&B goes before the Board of Adjustment, part of your management plan is outlining what your events are going to be. And the board's going to hear what those are. And they can say, well, yes, wedding is okay if you meet that maximum occupancy of the interior, or no, it's not okay. But you have to meet these 4 standards, A, B, C, and D, so.
So let me try to bring this around if I can. So under the standards, We've got bed and breakfast in residentially zoned districts shall limit all on-site events to interior gatherings. Our concern was size. The size is determined by the fire marshal on how many people can be in the building. So that limits the size. Most bed and breakfasts, I don't think any bed and breakfast is going to hold 50 people inside. It's not going to hold 40 people inside. It's limited to those that can fit there. So if Aunt Mary, and we did this because the question was, what happens if Aunt Mary wants to come, but Aunt Mary's staying up the street in another bed and breakfast or at a one of the hotels. So that, I believe, works keeping the size, whether it's parking or the amount of people gathering. It doesn't turn into a big blowout. They are inside, they are interior gatherings. Yes, Maria, you're right. People are probably going to go outside. I would, in a second. But if people staying there are allowed to go outside. There's nothing that says if you're staying at the inn that you can't go out in the back and enjoy a hot dog or a hamburger or what have you, even if there wasn't an event or a low impact gathering or what else, however else we want to define it. We set a time or the amount so that it didn't become something happening every Friday, Saturday, Thursday, Wednesday, on and on to on-site events shall not exceed 2 occasions in 30 days. So that really limits the impact on the neighborhood because it's in a residential area. And Fred, and I think to what you had said, I think in the February meeting about wanting to enjoy your own personal property without having to listen to what's going on. And that's one of the reasons we don't have the amplified music in there too. And then all abutting neighbors must be notified of all special events within 45 days of the event. So they've got a window. You have to let them know it so that people aren't lining up saying, hey, I've got an opening on Friday. Why don't you come on in? Sorry, it doesn't work. This way, it's well planned out, it's well organized, and it's well orchestrated. So it's not going to be this sudden, hey, everybody's down the street. We're going to get together tomorrow night and have this big blowout. With proof of notification shall be maintained on the premises for 2 years. That's one of the enforcement things that if you wanted to go in, if you thought there was a problem, in fact, we went back and forth with an email on this. One of the limitations would be by having it permitted through the staff is that you'd have an annual permit. So that way, if there were some problems within that permit, you could actually end it, not renew it at the end of the year. So, and this would be one of the things that if they said, staff said, let us see a book of notifications. Well, you didn't do it. Well, we're not going to renew it. So it's a pretty simple process. This is one of those types of things that it's difficult, but it's not an active enforcement. It's more of a passive enforcement. You know it when you see it. When suddenly you see 50 cars out there, when all of a sudden you're getting the neighbors calling you the next day, there's certainly an issue. And then we limited to the hours between 9 a.m. and 9 p.m. so that it's got to conclude by 9 p.m. All the different venues out along House Street or down in the Yacht Basin, they end, on House Street, they end at 9 o'clock. So, and it doesn't start earlier than 9, so you're not having somebody doing breakfast at 7 o'clock again, the one you didn't get invited to that you got upset about because they weren't doing that. And I don't blame you, I would have been upset too. But at least it limits those. So I think this is meeting everything that we can possibly think of outside of what the Board of Aldermen may think of next. Wendell, you've pulled us apart, pulled it apart, put it together. You've been more than patient with us, and I certainly appreciate it. I think the board's brought up some really good points, but Bob, you've got one and want to hear
it. I just want to, bring up say a brief statement about enforcement. When you have neighbors who are being notified, I think if there's an issue, the neighbors are going to contact someone. And if it comes to the attention of the staff that a particular bed and breakfast is consistently abusing the standards, then thank you. Then, they could be issued a warning of some sort. And if it continues or it happens again, why couldn't you just possibly say, okay, well, you're not going to be able to do any events for a period of 2-3 months or whatever. Give them a reason, give them some
Yes, sir.
Chris.
So the stick in this case is a rather large stick. It's the only tool that we have in enforcing this is that we take the offending bed and breakfast proprietor back to the Board of Adjustment, and we request that the Board of Adjustment repeal their special use permit. And that's a loss of your bed and breakfast, essentially. So I mean,
Well,
that right there, we
We want it
anticipate.
to be a loss of the, of being able to have an event for a period of time, not getting rid of their permit, but you understand what I'm saying?
The way the UDO gives us an avenue, we don't have that avenue.
Okay.
But we do have this ability to take them back to the Board of Adjustment and request that their special use permit be repealed. Which again, that's a big stick. That's gonna keep a lot of people from
As long
wanting
as that's
to
clear,
skin that sheep.
yeah. Okay, thank you.
Okay, but make a comment, Mr. Chair?
I hope it includes a motion.
Well, I think we're getting close because this was a hole that we had not filled in previous conversations. Which, Wendell, are you, is what you're making a suggestion or no, this is the way that we have something written somewhere?
We have it written in Article 2. Right after our phone call that you had alluded to earlier,
Yes.
I talked about it with Director Meehan, and she's like, well, let me show you, buddy, right
Okay.
here. And she broke it down for me. Yes, we actually have this pathway written in the UDO under Article 2, specifically the special use permits.
And Bob, to your point, and I'm not sure what that language is. It could be not that we bring it back to the board for a repeal. It could be for a review. And that review could result in a repeal, or it could result in a, wrist slap and say 2 months and no activity, but then you're back on. It could, is that possible?
We don't have that mechanism to make those judgment calls there. It's
Yeah.
either you are operating in alignment with our standards or you're not. And if you're not, the pathway to removing this problem is repealing your special use permit.
Okay.
Now, that would be a quasi judicial proceeding and the board would make that call. The Board of Adjustment would make that call ultimately. But, the threat of losing your bed and breakfast special use permit would be more than enough of a stick to keep, I imagine, anyone having a high impact gathering, which I know that's a term that we have not defined.
Okay. Mr. Chair, then I'll bring in 2 things for, I don't know if I'll make them as recommendations, but it's getting to the motion. And now it's a little bit technical. In paragraph 3.8C2, if everybody finds that on page 5 of 6, 3.8. Oh, good. What I'm recommending is we should replace the word should with the word shall. Good. Are you seeing that? That word is also in the Southport Code of Ordinances, Division 2, Section 4-131. So that would, if we change that word, which is, I don't think a good word to use, should, it should be shall. That we need to replace it in both if we carry that motion. So the other recommendation.
Wait, Doug, if you could, tell me exactly where that is, please. Yeah.
Yeah. I wrote down here 3.8C2.
Is it a subsection of 2?
3.8C2. If that has to do with the management plan.
The application for bed and breakfast shall include?
Oh, this is good. Okay, good.
Yeah, we've already changed it for you.
Nice.
Yeah.
All right.
We've got that kind of,
Okay, nice.
we're using AI here, so it listens to us and is changing this on the fly.
Okay, well then maybe it's very possible. I'm looking at the Unicode, but it could be I'm looking at a former version also of the Southport Code. But that was in 4-131, Division 2, 4-131. That's where it comes from. And 3.8.2C.
Yeah, yes, sir. So what you're talking about is the existing language of 3.8C2. That's what currently is in the UDO, the term should.
Okay.
We've amended it, as you can see on the screen here,
Yeah.
and then under proposed text amendment, that term has been changed to shall.
Okay, then now I'm looking at the screen, but it also is the same here in 2C. It says must, but I believe the correct word there should also be shall.
No, why wouldn't you want must? Because must says you must do these standards.
because I believe the technical legal term is shall. I didn't make it up. It's just consistently technical legal term. Somebody could say I'm incorrect.
If you make that change, will you make a motion to?
I'm ready to make a
All
motion,
right.
yeah. Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion. I make a motion that we accept this amendment as it's written with the revision that we also replace the word must with the word shall in section 382C.
As in, the management plan shall meet the following standards.
Yes, and also all abutting neighbors shall be notified of all special events.
And you're doing that as a recommendation to forward this on to the Board of Aldermen with the planning board's recommendation for approval.
Yes.
There was also discussion of changing the term from specific or a specialized event to just events. I don't want to throw that out there if that's an avenue you want to go.
If you do that, we're gonna start all over. What's your pleasure?
I'm just trying to be transparent.
Yeah.
Specialized event versus event to change to event.
Can
Hold
we
on, so
modify the
ye-
motion to include striking the word special from the same item that Doug was referring to about replacing must with shall?
Tell me that a little bit more, please. Which part?
In paragraph C,
Yep.
where it says all abutting neighbors must be notified of all special events. Special events isn't defined anywhere, and I would suggest that we strike the word special.
Okay. Doug, would you be all right with adding that to your motion?
Yes.
If that didn't come across, the answer is yes. So motion been made for recommendation to the Board of Aldermen for approval, subject to those changes, which is eliminating the word special events on section C, as well as changing where it says must on C2 and C2A. So they will be changed to must. Motion been made. Do we have a second?
So moved.
John, thank you. Motion been made and seconded. Do we have any further discussion?
I have one question.
Okay.
So whether it's a residential property or a non-residential property, the owner owns the house, and to a certain degree, they have every right to do happenings in their home as they please. So if I wanted to have a book club every Monday, does that violate what we're talking about? If I wanted to have a Quaker meeting every Saturday, a Quaker prayer meeting, does that consistent with what we have here?
No, I don't feel that. I feel that that's different than what we're talking about here.
So how would I know that?
Pardon?
How would I know that?
Because you're saying that as an event.
Yeah. I mean,
Is it an event or?
we can include that as a low impact gathering, only to happen twice a month in a 30-day period, from the hours of 9 to 9. I guess that's part of what would be in the management plan, is outlining what your gatherings are going to look
No,
like.
No, I think he means as a private residence, if he wants to have a book club in his house, or if he wants to have a Quaker meeting in his house. Is that defined as an event that would? then-
No, oh, no.
Right.
Neither
Did I
of those
understand you right?
are commercial aspects. Those are just your personal hobbies.
Okay, so a common thread, what we're talking about is an event for gain, for financial gain.
Yes, sir. Yeah, if we're talking like hosting a wedding venue, or a wedding party, or doing, hosting a specialized dinner. If you're making a commercial gain out of the situation, That's what this is regarding. If your personal hobby is to host a book club, but no, that's not what we're not in the business of micromanaging what people can and can't do in their homes. So.
That's it.
Thank you. Any other comment? Okay, hearing none, motion been made and seconded. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Abstain? Motion carries unanimously. On to the Board of Aldermen. And Wendell, thank you. This board is certainly diligent before we, pass anything on to the Board of Aldermen. We appreciate your patience and all your hard work on this. I think what you've seen from us is just a small scintilla of what you're going to get from the Board of Aldermen when you bring it there as well. I am sure that they'll have even more questions. So thank you.
No, it's my pleasure. And again, I do appreciate your guys' serious thought and inquisitions into this matter. Steel sharpens steel, and this only preps me for the Board of Aldermen, who, as you had mentioned, this is just going to be a drop in this pan, and it makes this a better product for them to review. Thank you.
Did you say Inquisition?
Yes.
Did it feel like that? Thank you. Nice work, everybody.
I use that as an abbreviation for inquisitive
That's fine.
means of
Yeah.
reviewing this.
Thank you. Nice work, everybody, on this one. It's been difficult and it's well done. So next up, ZTA 26-03, Zone and Text Amendment, Section 3.1, Table of Uses, Pools in Business Districts, on page 40 of your agenda. Is Mo hiding back there tonight? Is that, yeah. All right.
I hope you don't mind. It's going to be me tackling this one also. But good evening and thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the board. This presentation outlines zoning text amendment 26 text 03. This is a request that involves a proposed update to the cities of Southport's Unified Development Ordinance, specifically related to the permitted accessory use swimming pools. The applicants, Glenn and Amy Patterson, have submitted a request to amend the table of permitted uses. This is a legislative request, meaning it applies broadly to the UDO rather than to a single property. Currently, swimming pools are permitted in several districts, including residential, R10, residential 20, multifamily, and even the central business district. However, they are not permitted in the BD, highway commercial, or open space districts. The proposed amendment would modify Table 3.1 to allow swimming pools in the BD. Importantly, this request does not propose any changes to the existing development or safety standards for pools as established in Section 3.6.Q. The applicant's justification is based on consistency. Since swimming pools are already allowed in the more intensive CBD, it is reasonable to allow them in the BD. Additionally, uses like hotels, inns, and B&Bs, often which are associated with pools, are permitted in the BD. The Southport 2050 Comprehensive Plan supports periodic updates to the UDO. While it does not specifically address swimming pools, it encourages modernization and context-sensitive uses in commercial areas. Planning staff find the request reasonable and consistent with the comp plan. Furthermore, the BD is designed to be compatible with nearby residential uses, and this amendment aligns with that intent. Staff recommends approval.
Open up to the floor.
Next steps. The amendment follows a legislative review process. The planning board provides an advisory recommendation while the Board of Aldermen makes the final decision after a required public hearing. Following this presentation, the planning board will make a recommendation, and then the Board of Aldermen will then hold a public hearing and make the final decision on the amendments. This concludes my presentation. Thank you. And now, please.
Thanks, Wendell. John.
Does anybody know why pools were not permitted in the BD?
Excellent question, sir. No, I've gone back to look at previous UDOs, and they just weren't allowed in those either. We pulled the thread as much as we could. We could not find rhyme or reason why pools were not in the BED. But that was part of the process of generating the staff report, is looking into that, and there just doesn't appear to be a reason that we could find out.
Wendell, did you also look at the special use permits? Were there any special use permits in the business district for a pool?
Negative, ma'am. Right now, so the way that the UDO works, particularly the table 3.1, let me pull it up here if I have it. So I don't know how well you can see that, but basically, if there's a blank under that zoning district, that means it's not permitted with a special use permit or without, period. It's just not a permitted land use. And just happens to be that there's a blank in the BED when it is regarded to swimming pools. We don't know if this is oversight, just something that was overlooked, or intentionally developed like that. But we couldn't find a justification for why they were not permitted in there. And because it's blanked under that zoning district, that means the special use permit wasn't an avenue for this process.
I think great catch by the residents or of Southport to find that.
Bob,
Just a quick question. Currently, do you know of any homes or businesses in the, some place in the business district that currently has a pool?
No, I don't know of any local
would it-
businesses or homes that currently have a pool.
Would a bed and breakfast be considered a business?
Yes, sir.
Okay, well, just a couple of doors down from me, there is a bed and breakfast that has a pool. How did they get their pool permitted?
Are they in the business district? That's the question. What district are they in? If they're in the business district, maybe the pool was there before zoning came in, and then it would be considered legally non-conforming. But most likely, if it's the bed and breakfast I'm thinking of, they're not in the BED, they're in the R10, which allows for pools.
Okay, so you answered my
or
question.
CBD. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
I have a couple questions. So the applicant, what is their position? Do they own property in the business district and they're want to introduce a pool for commercial reason?
Great question, sir. No, so the pool is only for their personal use. The applicant's own was a legally non-conforming single-family residence in the BD. I forget the address, but it's the beautiful house that's right next to Spike's ice cream parlor. They happen to have a legally non-conforming single-family residence in the BD right now, and they just want to be able to have a pool. But because the way the ordinance is written, there's no avenue except for a text amendment that would allow them to have their pool.
Okay, I don't see any issue with having a pool, but if somebody had a property in the business district that was truly a business and they wanted to put a pool in 5 feet from the rear property line of the neighborhood behind it, that might be interesting. And I'm wondering if they're for the business district, should be a greater setback required.
That's certainly something we can entertain. Right now, the CBD doesn't have a greater setback. It's 5 feet, period. And again, I want to reiterate, this is for an accessory land use, not a commercial pool. But that's something that we can certainly take and modify this if that is the consensus of this board.
Chair, if I could, Fred, could you pull a string on that? So that sounds like a concern on your point. What are you thinking? You're imagining something that would be dissatisfactory.
Well, so maybe the accessory use is capturing this and it's okay in that case. If it was a commercial use and let's say the new brewery in town wanted to put a swimming pool in 5 feet from the backdoor neighbor, and they're going to have lifeguard chairs and maybe a diving board, it might be interesting.
Because the intensity, you're thinking of something in a business district that is a business is going to be much, much higher than somebody who's a resident in the business district.
Right, so with other things in the business district, including, I can't cite what they are, but maybe Wendell could do it for parking or buffers or things like that. If there's a swimming pool 5 feet from the back property line, there is no buffer of any kind.
Correct. Well, basically, the way that works is, so this is 2 points here. First point is the 5-foot setback is not superior to a 20-foot buffer. The buffer will have the greater of the 2 restrictions. So say you want to put in a pool in your commercial, your zone BD, and you're adjacent to an R20. You have to have a 20-foot buffer no matter what. Your pool can be right at that line of the 20-foot buffer, but it may not at all encroach beyond into that buffer. So to that point, you know, for the BED purposes, when you're adjacent to another property, that buffer is not gonna be reduced. It would still have to be maintained.
That makes me feel better.
And then the other point is, this is for accessory land use, not a commercial pool. So back to the point of if the new brewery wanted to put in a pool, that would be a major site plan modification altogether, in which case we would have to go before this board to discuss that, most certainly.
Wendell, can you imagine standing where you are right now, where it would not be a major site plan modification? I mean, because that sounds like that's going to solve this concern for us.
I mean, the term would be anything that's less than 10,000 square feet, but of impervious ground cover, and I also want to say, I'm speculating here. Director Meehan could touch on this a little bit more, but if there's X amount of impervious ground cover that's 10,000 square feet or more, or amount of ground disturbance. But I think that triggers the major site plan.
But a pool doesn't count against pervious surface or against impervious surfaces.
That's right, the water doesn't, but if you're having a commercial pool, you're gonna have decking around it and all that stuff.
Here comes the backup.
Good evening.
Hi there. Any questions down here on this side? Before you go, I do have questions. Does the pool, this is gonna be a sideways question, so here we go. Does the pool have to be in the ground? Could it be on the second floor of a building? You look at now with the way everybody's doing all these great pools, and I'm thinking about allowing it in the business district. If you got a commercial district and they decide, a commercial business, and they decide to put a swimming pool on the second floor, nothing that would prevent them from doing this, correct? Other than just having money to just spend like crazy. Okay.
I mean, chances are that would have to go through TRC and this board, almost certainly would have to go before this board, and that would be something that would be discussed. But there's nothing in the UDO that says blanketly pools may not be on the second or tertiary.
Why would it have to go before this board if you're already allowing pools? You've got no definition.
This is for an accessory land use. We're talking about commercial.
That wouldn't count as an accessory land use?
No, that would be a commercial aspect.
Okay. Good. On the same idea, why aren't we allowing them in the highway commercial? Shouldn't we be doing it there as well? I mean, what's the harm? If we're doing one, why not do the other?
I mean, we can totally do that if that's the purview of the board.
Yeah. Because I can't imagine why you wouldn't allow them in the highway commercial. Don't we have hotels in the highway commercial district?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So how, the latest one, how would they get a pool? They wouldn't be able to unless we put it in.
That's correct. Yes, sir. And we can certainly amend this
Yeah,
to,
I'm just looking for, sometimes going back to what you said on the last one about going through the comprehensive plan and things that we have to review every now and then with different ordinances. To me, it seems a no-brainer. If you're doing it in the business district, you might as well allow it in highway commercial as well.
Hey, Mr. Chair, maybe pause for reflection because I had the same question as John, which is, hey, did we ever figure out why we didn't want them? Because apparently at some point we didn't want them. And I was sitting in my chair at home going, yeah, why don't we want them? What are your thoughts? What are your, in your experience, anybody here, why wouldn't we want something in the business district or the,
I mean, if there was a good reason for it, I guess someone would know, right? So maybe as Wendell pointed out, it was just an oversight. And the reason it's coming up now is someone asked. And maybe highway commercial, someone will ask, if we don't address it. But my question was if there was a good reason, then I guess we wanted to hear it, but it doesn't appear that anyone knows of a good reason.
correct. In my research, I couldn't find rhyme or reason as to why it was not permitted in these other zoning districts.
one last question here, Mr. Chair. You brought something up last month as we were getting ready. I think Mo brought this to our attention that, hey, this month we'll be talking about it. And you used a term that as I reflected on it, thought it might be bigger than this pool issue, and that is the term spot zoning. Wasn't quite sure what you meant, and I wasn't sure if it sounded like a bad thing, but maybe it's a good thing. Could you further define it? Yeah, that was something that you brought up as a side comment.
I don't recall it.
Okay, does that term mean something in your experience in other communities? Spot zoning?
It just really, it wouldn't pertain here. Spot zoning is more when you're taking and putting a commercial business on one lot. So if you were suddenly going to go to the business district and say, you know what, we're going to make this one lot highway commercial, that would be spot zoning. I don't think that pertains here at all.
Okay, it sounded like in the context of last month that it would create potential inconsistencies that we would have to that would cause problems, and it captured my attention when you said it.
Yeah, I don't see how that would pertain here, though.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't see it as a problem because you're allowing pools in the entire business district. Actually, what you're really doing is saying, hey, pools are okay throughout Southport. If somebody makes a motion and amends this to include highway commercial, then it's pools are everywhere.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Mr. Chair. Looking at this broad definition of pool, swimming pool, there's no differentiation between above ground or below ground. Is that a concern, or should it be a concern to abutting neighbors if a pool is above ground as opposed to in ground?
I can't imagine why that would be a concern to
Well,
neighbors.
if an above ground pool fails, where's all that water going to go?
No, I understand. I'm sorry. I don't know how that relates to this text amendment. I can redraft this text amendment to change the definition.
I didn't intend to open up a can of worms. I had the question,
Yes, sir.
should there be some differentiation?
I don't think so. I don't think that's that big of a concern. Generally speaking, there's enough setbacks between properties, and if I'm speculating here. So if a above ground pool were to fail, yeah, it's going to spill out, but tertiary ground is going to absorb that water. It may cause a flood of your adjacent neighbor. I guess that would be a civil matter, not one that we're going to guard against in planning and land use.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, it would not be nice. Yeah, trust me, the water's not gonna soak into the ground. It's gonna take down the fence. It's gonna go everywhere. There's a lot of water in a pool.
If that's purview of the board, we can take this conversation and generate something with that, but that's.
No, because we don't regulate it throughout the city. We don't have anything that says you're not allowed to have in above ground pools anywhere. So I think that'd be probably overreach, and it's probably a good point that it's up to the neighbors to be conscientious of what they're doing, you know, and allowing for it. So
Mr. Chair,
yes, please,
if we're done with discussion, I'd like to make a motion.
please do.
I hereby make a motion that we approve this text amendment by the suggestion adding pools to both the business district and the highway commercial district.
Motion has been made. Do we have a second? This is for approval for recommendation to go to the Board of Aldermen. Okay. Do we have a
I'll second that motion.
Bob, thank you. Give me a second. Okay, motion has been made and seconded with the amendment that it includes the highway commercial district. Do we have any further conversation? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. I do have to read two statements of consistency. I missed the one for ZTA 2405. Hey, Scott, reading the first one up. I'm reading the statement of consistency from the last one, just so you'll have it in the minutes. The City of Southport Planning Board hereby recommends adoption of the proposed zoning map amendment to the Board of Aldermen and finds that it is consistent with the city's 2050 camera comprehensive plan adopted October 9th, 2025. More specifically, the proposed amendment is consistent with policy 7.8. Southport recognizes that tourism is important and will support activities that promote tourism. Planning Board recommends that the Board of Aldermen approve the zoning text amendment. Now for the zoning text amendment that we just did, ZTA 2603, statement of consistency and recommendation. The City of Southport Planning Board hereby recommends adoption of the proposed zoning map amendment of the Board of Aldermen and finds that it is consistent with the city's 2050 camera comprehensive plan adopted October 9th, 2025. More specifically, the proposed amendment is consistent with policy 1.7.1, the regular review and modernization of the Unified Development Ordinance, specifically the table of permitted uses and associated definitions. Planning Board recommends that the Board of Aldermen approve the zoning text amendment. Okay. Nice work. And that we're doing exactly that. We're going through the different UDOs and finding where there might be some holes or opportunities for improvement. Speaking of, next one up. And nice work, Wendell, again. ZTA 26-04 zoning text amendment section 3.8Y mobile vendor or food truck. Mo, you're the lucky one on this one.
Good evening. Thank you, Chair Ashley and members of the board. This evening, I'm presenting an amendment to the mobile vendor or food truck section of the UDO. This proposal was originally part of a larger UDO amendment that was not fully adopted by the Board of Aldermen in October of 2025. So we're bringing it back. Staff feels that this is the season is upon us, and this is going to help expedite and bring a better process for permitting to the food truck process. So this amendment was first initiated by staff because there was confusion between the vendors, the property owners, due to just the way the existing language reads and how the process has to work. Currently, the food trucks are designated as a non-residential land use. So that requires the property owner to come and get a zoning permit to allow food trucks on their property. On top of that, we require then the vendors or the food trucks to go get an itinerant merchant permit. So there would be two steps of permitting. There would be some confusion. The property owner says, hey, I got my zoning permit. I've, hired or scheduled this food truck. The food truck comes. They've not had their fire inspection. They don't have their permits. So it just became very convoluted. It was very hard and confusing, and it was frustrating to everyone involved, including staff. So we started and we looked at the definitions of a food truck and a mobile vendor. Food truck and mobile vendor are similarly the same. Food trucks are considered a mobile vendor for the, all intents and purposes of the UDO itself. So it's a readily movable trailer or motorized wheeled vehicle currently registered with the North Carolina Division of Motor Vehicles, which is designed and equipped to serve food and or sell merchandise. So we're keeping these definitions in as they are written, so there's going to be no change to the definitions. I just wanted to make sure that those were brought forward so we knew what the definitions were. And we're changing it from and removing food truck from the mobile vendor, so it's just an easier since they are, it is considered a mobile vendor as in the definition itself. So I know you cannot read this, but we are proposing that changes so that the mobile vendor will be changed from a non-residential land use to an accessory use. So the mobile vendor itself will become an accessory to a commercial use that exists. So that way we're going to have one zoning permit for the vendor rather than having a zoning permit with the property owner, the itinerant permit. So this zoning permit with the truck will also, it'll serve both purposes for the itinerant permit as well as the zoning permit as well. So this is the changes that we are proposing, the big changes. So what I want to outline again is let me find the page. We are changing it to the mobile vendor is going to be an accessory use. So they must come in and get a permit. There'll be an annual permit, zoning permit, and they are going to be required to bring in and submit the same information that is required now by the property owners. So no changes in what the requirements are for the vendors. It is just who is supplying the information. So it's going to be a valid license and vehicle registration, any permits from the state or county that may be required, a site plan detailing the property, where they will be located, where they'll be parking, and any land and the land uses of adjacent properties. And we will also need to get a signed letter or consent or agreement from the property owner where they will be operating. And we will allow them to upload throughout the year as many, different agreements that they want, so they aren't held to one property. The last change I want to go over with you is for city-sponsored events. And this came up as well. We spoke with Elena and her staff with community relations that there was a lot of confusion when there was a food truck rodeo. Do we need to get an itinerant merchant? Do we need the zoning permit? So we wanted to make sure that anyone coming in just for a city event that is not going to be operating otherwise on any other properties throughout the city, yes, they still need to come in and get their zoning permit, itinerant merchant permit, because that way we can ensure that they have all of the proper registrations and any permits that they need from, like, again, from the county or state. Also, it's important we're going to be able to incorporate into our permitting workflow our fire inspections, so that way that is expedited as well. So once you get your zoning permit, you don't have to try to track down the fire marshal. You will already have your fire marshal inspections before you receive your permit, so you're ready to roll literally once you get your permit. So that's one thing we wanted to make sure. So the city sponsored events, that the vendor would not have to include a site plan or consent from the property, but it doesn't, again, ensure the licenses and registrations are up to date. So staff find that this change is consistent with the UDO as well as our 2050 comprehensive plan. And we are requesting the consideration of a recommendation of approval to the Board of Aldermen.
Questions? John?
Thanks, Mo. The cobwebs about this are slowly clearing. I think we dealt with this quite a while ago. For the city-sponsored events, it's clear that the vendor does not need to provide a site plan or letter consent for that event, right? But regardless of if they operate elsewhere in the city, they would still need a permit. They just don't need to provide the site plan and letter of consent for this event. And it might be duplicating it a little bit, but I would suggest that we add that. And let's see, it says a mobile vendor participating in a city-sponsored event does not need to provide a site plan or letter of consent for that city-sponsored event. And then strike and will not otherwise operate in the city. Because if they're operating in the city, they still need a permit for that other location, right?
I want to make sure I'm understanding. Yes, everyone needs to come, every vendor needs to come and get this permit. We're specifying anyone who is coming only for this event. Let's say they're coming for Springfest from South Carolina, and they have zero desire ever to come back to Southport until next Springfest. So they'll get their annual zoning permit. So we're saying, okay, that's great. You're coming, you're getting your inspection, you're getting your permit, but you do not need to supply us with a site plan or consent because you're only operating as part of the city event. So I guess, can you expand on what you're asking? So I'm not wrapping my head around exactly what it is.
I think we're saying the same thing. What I'm saying is, if you're participating in a city-sponsored event, you don't need to provide a site plan or letter of consent for that event, regardless of whether you're operating somewhere else in the city. Because if you are, you would need a permit for that. That requires a site plan, et cetera, right? It just when I read
Okay,
that,
I see what you're
Yeah,
saying. So just
okay.
basically cleaning it up and saying that you don't need to have a site, regardless of who you are, you do not have to provide a
right.
site plan or consent for a city event. Okay.
Mr. Chair, can I interject on that one?
Yeah, as long as John is set.
I'm good.
Okay.
So,
Yes, please.
John, I was struggling with that one a little bit too. I think I know what you're saying. I was just trying to make sure I was parsing it. So I wrote down potential alternative. I'm going to read it. You tell me if, quote, city-sponsored events. A site plan and letter of consent are not required when a mobile vendor is participating in a city-sponsored event.
Only.
Yeah, cool. I tried to figure out because if there's a concern that you're going to come to a city-sponsored event from 8 to 12 and then pop over across town and do a non-city sponsored event, but you think you're covered. Is that, Maria, is that what you're thinking, or John, is that what you're trying to eliminate that?
I'm just trying to be specific. Only. You get that zoning, you get the zoning permit, that is only for a city event. When you put the word only in, there are no exceptions. There's no confusion. It is only for that city event. Gotta love the English language. I have a question. Please,
Hold on. I just want to make sure that Doug is all set with what he was asking. Mike,
The wording that I suggested, which eventually will get into a motion, whatever makes sense to Mo and you guys too, is that helped me understand it better. I guess if we put the word only, to Maria's point.
you're all set, Maria.
Thanks,
Thank
Mr.
you.
Chair.
thank you, Chair. My questions are a little more nitnoid. When I'm looking at section 8, which has a line through it because there are some changes in it, I'm getting very confused about my temporary outdoor seating, which requires me to have 2 acres. But if I have 2 mobile vendors in the same location, my maximum is 1.5 acres, and they bring their temporary seating, I have fewer acres. Can I combine them? So when I do temporary seating and I have 2 mobile vendors, they're both going to use the same 2 acres. That is confusing to me in the spacing and the way it's set up related to maximum 2 vendors on a lot of 1.5 acres or less, maximum of 3 on 1.5 and 1 acre, maximum of 4 on lots greater than 1 acre. And then the temporary seating requires 2 acres. So That just to me needs to be a little bit cleaned up somehow.
That's fine. To me, when I think of temporary seating, that's when the trucks themselves come and bring their own seating.
Yes, I understand. I understand that, but I have picnic benches and mine are all folded and I'm bringing them. And the chairs mobile vending machine is there and we're sharing 1.5 acres under the original 7A section. But now we need to have 2 acres. Okay, we get 2 acres. He has a mobile vendor. I'm a mobile event. Is that enough for both? I don't know or can't tell from the way this is worded.
Okay.
If I may, when I read this, Maria, item 7 doesn't talk about seating. So if you've got trucks pulling up on a site that's, 1.5 acres, that does not include temporary seating.
I understand. So you and I are both mobile vendors. We're on 2 acres. Is that sufficient for both of us to put out temporary seating? I'll restate that. So 2 vendors on 2 acres and we each bring our own temporary seating. Is that sufficient? Okay. My next question is, you removed food truck and made it a mobile vendor. How would you consider people who are selling jewelry or otherwise? Are there allowances in here? And the example I'll give, in Northern Virginia at the breweries, they bring those old round campers. You sell bracelets and jewelry inside and you walk inside and walk back out, right? So I'm not sure that this has allowances in there for those mobile vendors. I like everything that's in here, but you should also consider if you're going to say all mobile vendors, there are some rules for those too.
Okay. Yeah, it would include all of those.
Okay.
So if it's anyone serving food or merchandise from a truck or a trailer that is pulled, that is considered a mobile vendor.
Okay. I think so. Yes. Thank you.
Bob,
Mo, my daughter has a business as a mobile espresso specialty coffee business. This is not on wheels. She usually brings this in a van of some sort and sets it up. So it's mobile just from the fact that it has to be transported from one place to another. So I don't want to have something like that limit. Now, she doesn't do business in this state, but, the definition of mobile vendor maybe could be clarified, identified better. Because they don't all come in on wheels or being towed.
To me, what you are describing, I would not consider a mobile vendor, because the mobile vendor it's going to be serving or from the truck or the trailer itself, or selling from the truck or the trailer itself.
Okay, but what if it's not? What if it's
Right.
set
So,
up
if you-
as
so, so that like that, I think that would be like a caterer. So
Mhm.
you come, you unload, you set
Okay,
up in
so that's-
somewhere, and then serve your food or your drink, and then I think that to me is
that's covered under this definition?
that is not covered under this definition, because it wouldn't be considered a mobile vendor.
what would it be considered?
Right, so a caterer is not considered a mobile vendor.
No, they're not.
So
So,
I think of vendor, I think of everything. It covers all the gamuts and I have the same thought. So I turned 70 this year. With any luck, my wife is going to plan a surprise birthday party for me. I'd like to have a pig roast, and I think she's probably watching, so she'll hear that I'd like the surprise birthday party with a pig roast. Just being very straight up, no hint. Anyways, so that, I noticed on here that it's not allowed in a residential district. So you're saying that somebody could still bring in a food truck in a residential district and it would become a caterer, but not a food truck?
I think it could be, we could walk that line. I was going to bring up that the uses aren't in the residential zones, and I have been asked many times about someone hiring a food truck for a special event or a one-off kind of something. So that is something to consider. I think that it would clean it up so we can say absolutely yes. I wouldn't have to find a way to make it happen because I think that that is something that people like to do. To me, a caterer comes and it to me, it's different than a mobile vendor in the sense as this is defined, because it is using what that truck or that trailer to do your business and and from it.
Because I know they have pizza trucks, they have portable bars, you know, with drinks, and for those that can understand the word bar, you know, that will go to the residential areas, and I want to be really careful that we're not excluding those.
Well, and I also think if you look at it in the sense that if it's not a business, like if you are not conducting consumer business from that, then I think it's a different category as well. So if you're hiring someone to come serve food, but you're not in my driveway selling coffee to my neighbors.
And I think that you're saying that this would enable people to do that. But what happens if you suddenly hit the lottery and you don't want to do this job anymore? The next person comes in and says, this is not what it says here. It says it's not allowed in residential areas whatsoever. And I'm thinking, well, Bob's comments with his daughter and being able to do that. So how can we make sure that it's clear in here?
Well, I'm more than happy to take it back and see if we can flesh it out a little bit more to include some of these or get some more research that will show exactly, you know, what some of those other uses may be. If you would choose, if you'd like, I mean, I'm more than, that's fine.
Well, what's the best way to do this? Could we approve this tonight so that way, because we've got the summer coming up and I don't want to delay this but is there anything that we could have, that this would work in, I don't want to say turn a blind eye, but with your opinion right now saying that, yeah, people can go ahead and have a caterer in their backyard, that this wouldn't prevent them from doing such a thing. So I'd like to perhaps have this approved tonight so that it just smooths the business out for this upcoming season. And certainly based on the Balderman's approval, of course. But I'd welcome the board's thoughts on doing that.
Mr. Chair, I have another question. So I'm confused by Bob's example because I'm going to buy a van and put my espresso maker in it, and I'm going to go and pop my card table out and then start making coffee. I would like to see the definition of the mobile vendor also include them, because they could easily set up at any of the SpringFest or other locations. Don't want to cause any problems, but I see that as a mobile vendor as well. I also think that if a mobile vendor is hired in a residential district, they should meet all of the requirements and be included, even though this is a commercial UDO text. And the reason is my husband had an older birthday and he wanted a food truck. And I said, they have to get all their own licenses and zoning. I'm not doing that. And so I'm not doing that. So no, I'll be cooking, thanks. Because it would be too difficult to figure it out. And I think if it's a single mobile vendor in a residential district that meets the zoning requirements as laid out by the UDO text, that definition can help both for the residential as well as the commercial. And then I had a question regarding the 50 feet space between the mobile vendors in the business district, because they show up at the businesses and there may be 2 or 3 businesses side by side, given the small lots in Southport that are less than 50 feet where a mobile vendor may show up. how is that going to be handled? Because when I first looked at that 50 feet, they may be side by side. When you look at breweries, don't have a perfect example for you. But that is something to think about related in those issues. That's all I have. Sorry.
Other comments? John?
It sounds like most of the questions are in the definition of mobile vendor and not so much in the text that we're reviewing. I mean, can we agree to revisit the definition of mobile vendor and modify it as needed? And perhaps that won't hold up some of the important permitting items. And of course, Maria's question is outside of that, the setbacks and all, but because we're not modifying the definition of mobile vendor in this document, right? We're just removing the reference to a food truck.
So would you like to do that without, I want to make sure I understand the process, or what you'd like to do. Would you like to kick it back to Mo entirely, or just the definitions? You know, yeah, I'm just thinking about going to the Board of Aldermen twice. I don't think we want to do that. So if we go back and ask for a clarification on definition, then bring it back next month, would that be satisfactory?
Yeah, that's fine with me.
Okay.
Yeah.
What about the rest of the board? Everybody all right with that?
Well, I think so, because Bob, I'm not sure if we got to resolution, but I think the example that you're exploring, because it's not just your daughter, it's other people here in Southport, is it like doesn't apply to you. I know this is not UDO, but in Article 3 of the city ordinances, like peddlers, vendors, and merchants, itinerant merchants must be permitted. So there's a whole other body of ordinances that are going to cover them that will allow or disallow somebody with an espresso tent to function. So I'm thinking we don't need to do anything. I think that this definition seems to be sufficient to task.
Yeah.
We don't need to do anything with the definition, that is to say.
And you're directing that towards John?
Well, to the
Yeah.
board.
Oh, that's what I mean, though.
Yeah.
You're answering John's
Yes.
question. Okay. Ed?
Mo, how are vendors at the farmer's market, what are they classified as?
They're part of a city event, so they're really permitted through the city that way.
Is that a low impact event? Just
Yes.
Yeah, just
Yes.
ignore that question.
So some of the vendors are mobile that attend that as well, and they're included, okay? Covered, okay. Thank you.
As long as there's anything, as long as there's no wording here that's being exclusive to anyone, any vendor, I'm fine with that.
Okay, what's the board's pleasure? I'm sorry, I do have one more question. Generators always drives me crazy when going by food trucks, the generators and the amount of noise, the impact on butters to that property. What do we have that can reduce the noise coming out of food trucks with those generators? There've been some that are absolutely phenomenal. They use the newer, quieter ones, and then you've got others that sound like they've got a diesel thing from 1950 running. What can we do?
I'm not aware of anything. I mean, if they meet the fire inspection and they're allowed to use them, then I don't have a good answer. I can do some research and see if there's, but I don't see where we can really regulate how they are, energizing their truck.
Thank you. What's the board's pleasure on this? Do you want to move forward with it? Do you want to kick it back? Do you want to ask?
I think we should move forward, given it's the summer season. I would open the definition of mobile vendors, all mobile vendors, and then where it pertains by the requirements for a food truck. It's a simple edit for Mo to go through and say all mobile vendors shall be included by this UDO text where applicable food truck specifics or requirements are listed below.
Does that sound appropriate?
Yes.
Maria, where would that text go?
That text should be in the beginning where she has removed food trucks and the UDO text amendment. Chair, I make a motion that we recommend for approval this UDO text amendments in which the opening line defines all mobile vendors and incorporates requirements specific to food trucks as well. And my wording is not exact, but I will trust Mo to make those so that this can be presented to the Board of Aldermen during our summer season.
Motion's been made. Do we have a second? Thank you, Maria.
I think I've got a malfunction here on the definition. I
Wait,
thought what we were
Wait,
doing
if
is not,
I either a second or so we can go into discussion. Anybody? Going once? Okay, Bob, thank you. Motion been made second. Further discussion. Thank you,
yeah,
Doug.
thanks,
Appreciate the
Mr. Chair.
patience.
I thought that the striking of the or food truck was to make it simpler, not to exclude food trucks. What I understood this to say is there's these people, they vend, they're mobile. It could be vending jewelry, espresso, steaks, or sandwiches. Am I missing your point, Maria?
No, I'm saying it's all mobile vendors. However, there are specific requirements for food truck vendors. My only point was to classify because the majority of the requirements and standards apply to food trucks, but we are including all of the mobile vendors.
Thanks.
Does that answer your question?
Sufficiently, thank you. My question is ill-formed, I think. I thought we were, for simplicity, making a bigger umbrella. I think you're bringing up some specifics of, hey, when you have jewelry, you don't need a fire extinguisher, but when you're cooking with a grill, you do. And so that would trip a flag that would say, fire marshal, you probably need to have these people come by you and talk to you.
It may, but I'm not, my motion. I'm sorry. My motion is not so specific as to identify individual mobile vendors. All mobile vendors will go for their permits as necessary. And if they're required to have a fire extinguisher, then that will be figured out in their application versus being so detailed. But I do think it applies to all mobile vendors. And the UDO text describes specific standards for food trucks as a mobile vendor.
Got it. Thank you.
Does that work, Doug?
I think it does. Thank you, Mr.
Okay,
Chair.
thank you. Anybody else? Motion been made and seconded. Do we have any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, abstained, so voted. Motion carries. Let me just read the consistency. The city of the amendment for ZTA 26-04 mobile vendor statement of consistency and recommendation. The City of Southport Planning Board hereby recommends adoption of the proposed zoning text amendment to the Board of Aldermen and finds that it is consistent with the city's 2050 comprehensive plan adopted October 9th, 2025. More specifically, policy 1.7.5, update and modernize the uses in the table of permitted uses. Updating local ordinances ensures uses are appropriate in designated zoning districts and relevant to the needs of the city. Thank you all. Nice work. Okay. Mo, I think you're still up. Staff reports. Page 50 on your agenda. Nice work tonight. Thank you.
Hey, thank you. I'm going to step in. So basically, a quick rundown of the last month since we last discussed. We've had one Board of Adjustment meeting, in which case 2 special use permits were approved. Both of them were for an ADU. one at 316 Westmore Street, and then the other at 206 Westmore Street. So if you're keeping track, that's 5 ADUs that went before the Board of Adjustment just this year. And all 5 have been approved now. Going forward, we have a Board of Adjustment meeting held on the 28th, in which case we have another ADU request going before the board. And then we have a special use permit request for Brunswick Housing Partnership. They are putting in a multifamily development off of 11th Street. And because of that being zoned O&I, it's required in the UDO that they get a special use permit for their multifamily developments. That being said, once it gets the special use permits, assuming that they get it issued, that case will be going before you guys next month, in which case I'll be the case manager for that and present you on that. Yeah, I don't want to steal Fred's thunder here, but the Forestry Committee is putting on their Arbor Day Festival on the 25th of Saturday, April 25th. And that is that. Oh, pardon me. We also have an appeal going before the Board of Adjustment next month on the 28th too. They are appealing one of our right-of-way violations. So there's that.
Can you elaborate which one that is?
It's 315 North Caswell. Yeah. Regarding the development review tracker, I've had some motion on that. I've uploaded all the variance cases for the past 3 years into it. I know that some of you guys are like anticipating that. I aim to have a beta for you guys next month's, in which case what we'll have to do is figure out a way that I can present it interactively and also let you guys have the link. That's something I'll get with Cheyenne about in the coming weeks. It will not be all encompassing. It will be very, very rudimentary. Probably won't even have Southport's logo and or color theme on it, but it will be something that you guys can play with and see where we're going with this. The goal right now is to have that launch in June. For June's planning board, you guys will have a hard and fast dashboard. So, yeah. That being said, if you guys have questions or if you have inputs that you would like to see in the dashboard, please email me. Keep in mind, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 of you guys, and only one of me. So, like, I'm not trying to build a horse and end up with a zebra, but you know, if you have, if there's specifics that you really want to see that you think I might not have already attached on, please don't hesitate to reach out to me. And that is development.
Go ahead, Fred.
Can you enlighten us what's happening with the site work next to the ABC store? And then also on the Beecham project, I see there's site work starting there. Are they continuing as initially planned?
Yes, the Beecham project is continuing on as initially planned.
Which project is that, please?
115 North Howe.
The old
Thank
car
you.
building.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Thank you.
So, and then I'm not. Is that SOPO?
Yes.
Sorry, SOPO. I apologize, out of context here. That is going to be a. It was a minor site plan review that went before us. 2025, I think it was when we approved it. We, as in staff. It is going to be a wine bar and cafeteria type thing. Not cafeteria, but restaurant wine bar. It was under 10,000 square feet, so it didn't meet the standards for a major site plan. And yeah, that's what's going on. Apologize. It's been so long, I spaced it.
Anybody else?
Mr. Chair,
Yeah, please.
wasn't sure if this was embedded in what you just asked, but there was a posting around town today about a forthcoming movie. Do you and shutting down the street and doing some stuff?
No, that's not something that I have any information on.
Thanks.
Yep.
Are you looking for a job?
I thought I'd bring in Tom Cruise and he and I just,
There we go. Wendell, I've got a question for you. Last month I mentioned about the ADUs and you did some homework for me, found that there were, since 2023, 22 have gone before the zoning board with all but one being approved, if I remember correctly. You've already done 5 this year. You got another one coming up next month. I understand the need to protect residents and abutters and things like this, but it seems to me that it's been an ongoing process that 99% of the time, these ADUs are being approved, which is an expense to the citizen, is an expense staff time. I don't know how much time you spend on each one of these, as well as at what point, you know, you go back and look at the comprehensive plan and how you're trying to revisit some of these ordinances to see if they're practical. At what point do we visit this and say, you know what, the method that's being used right now is time consuming and expensive, not only to the city, but also to the residents. And if they're approving these, are there some kind of conditions that if we were to do an ordinance, so they do an administrative permit, how could we work this out? Is there any appetite from the Board of Aldermen, I guess, is part of the question I want to know, to smooth this out? You know, nothing's crazier than making residents jump through hoops that are unnecessary, you know? So what are your thoughts?
Yes, sir. Thank you for asking me that. I'll just put the big thing there. I don't believe that the aldermen have an appetite for this being an administrative permit. I think from speculating here, from what I understand, they want it to be controlled so that they can make the condition that you cannot rent out the ADU. To answer your question, at what point do we bring forth? And we're a due process type of organization. If someone brings forth an application, my job is to process it and making sure that it's a full application and it goes through the proper avenues. Now, as staff, we can say, hey, this is something very much like with the bed and breakfast text amendment. You know, we can say this is just isn't working, and we can bring forth our own application. And if I felt that we had if I didn't feel that the alderman would shoot it down, I think I would have brought that forward already. But by all means, if the impetus is someone else wanting to drive this bus, by all means, I will process that application and change the text to be where it is no longer a special use permit, but it would be a permitted by right.
But don't we already have something in the ordinances about non-rentals, about not allowing rentals? So aren't you already covered if you were to do this by administrative permit? So are you saying that every time they go to the Board of Adjustment, one of the conditions is that it can't be rented, and that's the only way you can do that? You can't put an ordinance somewhere else saying you're not allowing rentals on ADUs?
Yeah, I'm speculating again. So no, there's nothing in the UDO that stipulates that it cannot be rented. And I feel there's not a whole lot of people that want to spell that out. So I feel like I'm speculating.
And no, I understand.
But I don't think that's something that, I think the way it's situated right now is by design, beyond my scope of control. And that doesn't mean I can't bring forth something to you guys for your review.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, please.
doesn't the certification and the proof of past rental for Airbnbs already provide that restriction? Because they're not issuing any new ones to my knowledge. Maybe that's not in the UDO or I can't find it, but that might be one aspect of eliminating the concern going to the Board of Adjustment. That was my understanding. You had to have registration and past rental.
Well,
To that point, yeah. So there's a difference between doing a short-term vacation rental, like an Airbnb or a VRBO. You have to be designated in a specific zoning designation. And yes, you do have to get registered with our office. We do have some legally non-conforming ones that we're doing it prior to the ordinance. But what the Board of Adjustments conditioning is not necessarily against short-term vacation rental because that's not allowed in most residential zone or at all in residential zoning districts. But renting out the ADU period as a like an apartment. Yeah, that's what the condition is against.
How do we find out whether there's appetite or not?
Roll the dice. I'm more than happy. This is something, as a,
Yeah,
as a city planner, this is something that I actually, I personally feel could be worth changing. I'm more than happy to bring this forward and then let the process play out and then be told no or approved.
Yeah, I don't want to waste your time either, and I don't want to waste the Board of Aldermen's time. If there's some kind of feedback that we could get, I'm sure some of them are watching and some are sitting here. But I think, let's not spin our wheels on something that we can redirect our focus somewhere else. Because there's no sense in saying, let's do this great big ordinance that smooths things out, in my view, if there's no appetite by the Board of Aldermen to even consider it. I don't want to waste their time either. So, I mean, we're just an advisory board, so I don't want to waste your time either. So let's see if we can't even send them an email. Although that might violate open meeting law. I don't know how you do a straw poll, but anyways, I'll let you figure that out.
Gladly. And again, if there's an appetite from this board or from individual outside of this listening in that wants to change the text,
Okay.
I'm your guy. I'm more than happy to bring that
All right,
forward.
let's sit on it for a month. Okay. Anything else, Wendell?
Negative. I will mention that next month, Director Meehan will be out of pocket. Maybe she should probably mention this. I'm sorry, I'm stealing your thunder. She has an NCAZO conference and rally and will not be in. So I'll be your go-to for May's planning board.
So if we wanted to slam some things through, that would be next month.
Right? Correct.
Mo, for us at all? Is that? Okay, thank you. Let's see, planning update, special projects, nothing going on with that. Board comments, let's start with Ed down the end.
No comments.
Okay, thank you, John.
A question, not a comment. Just checking on the status of the next series of stormwater regs.
So I met with Tom Zelenik this morning. We are working on the final edits for the soil disturbance deposit removal ordinance. And we are also looking into a soil erosion and sedimentation control as two separate ordinances. And then that will be sent to the city attorney. And then then we'll be out for review. I do believe that those ordinances will be part of the city ordinance and not included in as part of the UDO.
And they'll be together?
They'll be separate ordinances. The state has a template ordinance that they like the jurisdictions to use that is, it's well done. So we want to keep them separate so that they can work, because they're two separate things.
You have two documents, but you're going to move them along together?
Yes, sir.
Got it.
Yes.
Okay.
Do you have a goal date for those?
I do not.
Do you have an approximate goal date for those?
July.
Okay. I'll go with that because I was going to say September, but let's go with July. John, anything else? Bob?
No comments.
Fred?
As Wendell mentioned, April 25th, Saturday, 11 a.m., there's a city celebration of Arbor Day. There'll be entertainment, there'll be speakers, there'll be free ice cones, and then there'll be, we're having kids involved this year, and there'll be kids artwork displayed. It'll be kind of fun. So if you have time on that day and it's not raining, please come join us.
Great. Thank you, Fred. Maria?
Have we received any listing of priorities from the Southport 2050 plan as we go forward? Looking to see if any of those have been identified by the Board of Aldermen or by the staff, so that as we review our text amendments or we look at our projects, we look at all of them, but there may be some that are prioritized. It would be nice to get some kind of feedback and list related to that. That's my only comment.
Okay, thank you. Doug?
Nothing further. Thanks, Chair.
I want to make sure, I didn't see any comment back on Maria's. Do we have anything at all? I couldn't see you.
Well, I haven't received anything from the Board of Aldermen, but when we have brought forward some different things, we do look at the matrix as well as some of the priorities that have been brought up in the last year and a half. There have been discussions with the Board of Aldermen throughout the last couple years about some updates that they wanted to see. So we have those as well as what's brought forward. So
I'm a contracts kind of person. I like it in writing, and I haven't seen anything in writing that dictates how we should be thinking about these things from the Board of Aldermen or the city staff. Is that something that we could get?
yes, we can work on that for you.
That'd be great.
Thank you. Doug, anything? I have a couple of things. One is the planning board alternate seat. The opening was advertised on April 1st. I'm sorry, take that back. Planning board regular seats. Opening advertised on April 1st with applications due by the close of business, April 30th. That would be Ed and I are up because our terms are expiring. And I do hope you apply again so that you go through your, what is it, 4th or 5th interview in 2 months or something?
I did file.
All right, good, thank you. And I've got 2 weeks to file still, so I'll get it in. Also have the planning board alternate seat, opening advertised on April 8th with applications due in by the close of business, April 22nd. We're already hopefully lining up interviews. Fred and I will be participating in those. It was created when, vacancy was created when Ed was appointed to the full seat. So hopefully, after multiple attempts and filling this alternate position, hopefully we can get this done once and for all. We're shooting so that by the May meeting, we'll have some recommendations to the Board of Aldermen so we can get the seat filled for the May meeting. That'd be great. I'm working with Maria on the text amendment, looking at different ways that we can enhance some of the visibility and some of the transparency, both for the Board of Aldermen, and most importantly, the public, on some of these ordinances that we're anticipating or will change with the comprehensive plan. I think it's important that everybody understands how they work and they can really see at the different levels. And I know I've mentioned this before, but we're making some progress on it. Also, Mo, here's a question for you. Tree requirements. As I understand it, the UDO provides for tree replacement. And it's part of the reason for trees in new subdivisions is to add to the tree canopy in our city. And I know we'll never make up for everything that's been lost, but we would like to make sure that the trees that are being planted actually live. So my questions, and this is around how are they monitored? How long are they monitored? And who monitors them? And I'll tell you why I'm asking, because if you drive up to CVS, hate to point them out, but if you look at the plaza, the island between CVS and Starbucks, the trees are all dead. They've left the trees up. They're completely dead. Why they haven't burst into flames is beyond me. But somewhere along the way, somebody had to say, hey, when you do this, you need to put in these trees. And so on that same thought, after looking at those, I drove down through Waters. And now I know some of them are just coming through, but there's a lot of dead ones in there so far, in my opinion. And certainly they could surprise me in the next week. They could start blooming. But who actually goes through and makes sure that those trees are viable? It makes no sense to me, because I'm using CVS as an example, that we had this and yet the trees are dead because they were never cared for. So how do we ensure that these plantings, that the developers are actually going to care for them?
To answer your question, especially about the subdivisions, they are required before the final plat to do some of their major landscaping that is required. Then as we get their COs, we look at the landscaping that they're adding. And we do monitor that. In fact, we have been speaking with the superintendent at Waters because we are very aware that they're not living. So, and we know that there's a drought and they are irrigating, but as long as we're staying on top of them, they're usually very good about making sure that they're compliant. Something like the CVS Starbucks that's been there 5 years, I don't have much I can do.
And I understand that part,
Yes,
but I guess
right.
when I see something like that, and I'm thinking, these are already heading in that
Yes.
direction, I hate to have,
So we are definitely constantly monitoring those.
who's we?
We is the planning staff.
You guys go out and ride around and take a look.
Yes.
And how long would you monitor those for before is it when it becomes accepted by the city and then it becomes a city road? Is that when you say, okay, we're done? Or is there something that says, okay, over the next 5 years, you have to show an active plan that these trees are going to be either cared for or they're going to be replaced?
I do not have the authority to ask for like a 5-year plan. I wish I did, but I think that as they are constantly being built, we can keep asking, because I know that there are some in Osprey Landing that we have been making sure monitoring as well. So we have been talking with them about some of the ones that they have in their open space so that they can try to mitigate some of those as well.
But is that something that would fall under the forestry, tree protection UDO?
Yes, again, I don't know if I have the authority statutorily to do that. There are a lot of different laws and rules about how far we can go with landscaping or tree protection. We are working on our tree protection ordinance now. The city attorney is reviewing it in full. So if there's something we can add, I will. The only other thing I could consider is if there was a maintenance bond as part of it. But again, I don't think I can do a maintenance bond on landscaping. So we have to really look into some of those requirements.
Okay, thank you.
So I don't know if Wendell mentioned this case to you, Mo. Forestry committee members do pay attention to what's happening at the Waters, and recently I was at the Latter-day Saints Church and just checking on the big live oak to see how that was looking, which they did a great job with that. But there are probably 12 3-inch caliber trees they planted, and 5 of them are brown dead. And that's still not even a year maybe. So
I can surely ask and see what they can do. I mean, I think it's just been a hard year with the lack of rain. Not that that's an excuse, but I can certainly reach out, and hopefully that they will be receptive to the request and try to make some changes.
Thank you. You don't want to go away yet. I have more. Sorry. So I'm also giving some thought to perhaps having a joint meeting with the zoning board. And it's because of the ADU. And I'm looking at if there's some things that we could do to make their lives easier. And I don't know how we could do this, but I'm also thinking, I mentioned this to Noah last year about having the planning board join one of the business roundtables to see how we could help businesses in town while we're maintaining or protecting the character of the town, but how we can work with businesses. I want to make sure that we're getting some feedback, including a roundtable with citizens as well. Say, look, what can we do as a planning board to make your lives better, I guess? I think sometimes we come here and we go through these different ordinances and say, yeah, we need mobile vendors and smooth that sort of thing out. But do we hear enough from the public, and do we hear enough from the businesses? And I guess that's what I don't know. How do we open that up? What's the best method to do that, I guess, is what I'm looking for. So give some thought to that. Yeah, that's one of those. I also passed on to Mo a UDO recommendations for a data center. I'm a very proactive person. I'd rather make sure that I don't know of any data centers that are looking at coming, but I'd like to make sure that we have a UDO in place should they, because they're a large water usage. They are large power usage facilities, and as well as they can be noisy. So you want to make sure that if they're sited in an appropriate place. So, it's not jumping on the bandwagon, but we need to have something like that going. So I've sent some things over to Mo, like to see if we couldn't have that either June or July. Okay. And then lastly, this is the one that's going to really drive you sideways, alleyways. So I'm looking at wading in to hopefully provide some clarity around this long-standing issue. I see it just, I've been at the meetings, I've read it in the paper, and I think back to what we've done with right-of-ways and how we've enforced those. And I think that there's got to be something that we can do as a planning board to help assist people have access to the alleyways, that as well as the opportunity for utilities, you know, drainage, things like that, but that people, whether it's on pedestrians or bicycles or even people abutting them, can have access to alleyways, while at the same time protecting those people whose buildings may be encroaching on the alleyway itself, so that they grandfathered in. So we're not saying, hey, you got to move this, got to move that, and also protecting specimen trees. So I'm really interested in coming up and working with whoever wants to work with me on coming up with some type of an alleyway UDO that protects the people that live there, the people that abut it. I know it sounds crazy, but I think there's got to be something that we can do, that we put it in writing, because I just see this being kicked around forever unless we come up with something like we did with right-of-ways. So I don't know if and I'm trying to be careful with this one.
Until I get direction from the Board of Aldermen, I don't feel that I have the right direction to move forward with something for the UDO. I know that they requested at the last meeting to have kind of a town hall meeting to get some input from the citizens. So I feel like I think we should wait for that, for some sort of direction, or before we try to start something, just so
Okay.
we're not, you know.
Yeah, I just see this going on, and unless I think a UDO comes up that protects everybody involved one way or another, that it's just going to keep on getting kicked around, and there's never going to be any solution. I'm just looking what we can do as a planning board to come up with some kind of resolution or a solution for the next, 100 years or whatever, so. Okay, thank you. Anybody else have anything? Doug?
Hey, Mr. Chair, it seems like it was a successful effort to create a subcommittee to develop our thoughts on the bed and breakfast and events. It seems like there's an opportunity here to do the same for the data centers, or perhaps, well, you already mentioned the alleyways. So more specifically, I think it's a good idea if we do a subcommittee for the data centers.
Okay, we can do that. You're interested? Anybody else interested in data centers? I'm happy to be on it as well. We'll look for somebody else. We'll look for a third party as well. All right. That being said, without anything else coming before us, I'll entertain a motion that we adjourn. It's been a fantastic meeting. Got a lot done. It's a excellent board. I think it's fantastic. Wendell Biddle, me and Scott Balageron, Cheyenne Ketchum, as well as all the board. Nice work tonight. It takes a lot of people to get this going and get things done. So thank you all. Anyways, I'll entertain a motion that we adjourn. Motion been made. Do we have a second?
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Thank you. Thank you, everybody, and good night, Southport.